Arrested more than 2,000 people involved in pro-Palestinian protests at college campuses around the country. Who are these protesters? What exactly are they protesting against? And why are so many of the demonstrations including violence and vandalism? Joining us now is ASU Professor of Social Sciences, Craig Calhoun. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We really appreciate you being here and helping make sense of all that. Your thoughts in general on what you're seeing on college campuses.
Well, thanks for inviting me to discuss this. I think it's really important. My first thought is pay attention to the fact that it's college campuses. What's special about colleges? Why do we have these educational institutions, academic freedom questions, and then we get protests there? Some of the reasons are students are gathered there. They're all together in one place. They are encouraged to be thinking about the big issues of their time, and so they're taking positions. So most of the protests on campus involve mainly students who are engaged in airing their views of big issues, like why don't we have a ceasefire in Gaza, but also engaged in learning because they're debating and discussing with each other. They're having ongoing communication of various kinds across campuses. Now, that isn't violence, that isn't protest in and of itself. That's debate. A protest may mean holding up signs, putting tents, building a camp. One surprising thing is people said the camp seems so military. I think to me the camp is an evocation of the refugee camps in which so many Gazans and others have found themselves, and an attempt to make a point about that. Has it communicated? We'll have to ask. That's still not violence, right? That's disruption. And part of dissent and part of expressing controversial opinions is often disruption. You've seen it with civil disobedience against the draft in the Vietnam era, as part of the civil rights movement in various other contexts. Disruption can be part of communication. That's not violence. Violence is when there is actual physical threat or damage. It's not when people feel uncomfortable. It's when they might get hurt.
We're seeing some of that on college campuses around the country. We're seeing arrests for people who aren't following the ordinances and laws of the university. They're putting down these encampments in areas where they're told they're not supposed to, and they move, and the police move in, and you said most of these protesters are students. I would imagine most of them are, but apparently the arrests, many of the arrests are not students.
That's right.
When does the protest for a cause or a situation become chaos and the kind of thing the president was talking about that we don't condone here in America?
Well, I think that's right. We don't condone violence, and universities have a legitimate interest in trying to keep their campuses safe from physical violence. That doesn't mean safe from people feeling uncomfortable, but it means not having physical threats. Are outside groups sometimes behind violence? Yes. And universities have a good reason to try to limit outside access. I'm surprised in some of the cases around the country that universities haven't done things like saying we are arresting people, and those who have student IDs are being treated differently from those who don't have student IDs. Universities have good mechanisms for being able to distinguish off-campus actors from their student populations. They haven't always used them. They have leveled charges about the outside agitators, a word or phrase that goes back to the civil rights movement.
Yes, it does.
Take UCLA, right? The violence came mainly when a group saying that it was against the Palestinian demonstration and for Israel came onto the campus. It didn't come mainly from the original protest. Disruption came from the original protest. The anti-protest group created a violent situation, and I won't say there was no violence on all sides. And then there's the question of police and police action. And when is that the violence that we're worried about?
When does the police action, though? I mean, your schools they have the rules of conduct. They have the idea of you're a student, you do X. I mean, every student here knows there's rules of conduct in a variety of ways.
Sure.
You break those, and you mentioned civil disobedience. And again, those of us of a certain age understand civil disobedience as you do X, Y, and Z, which might be against the law, but you pay the price for that. You don't hide, you don't say, you don't fight back.
Yeah.
You say, I'm accepting that this is not the right kind of law. This is an unjust law. I'm breaking it, but I understand that I might have to do jail time or whatever the ramifications might be. Has that been lost on some of these folks?
Some of them perhaps, but I think a lot of them have been through, say, civil disobedience training, learning not to fight back at arrest. If you're going to have a peaceful protest, one of the things you learn is that you shouldn't be fighting back against that. Has everybody learned that, or does everybody agree? That I can't say. But let me make two other points. One, universities don't make laws, and we should distinguish the rules that universities make from laws. Universities make rules about what you can do on this lawn or what you can do after 11 p.m. Those are not laws. It's not breaking the U.S. law or the local municipality's law to not follow the university's rules.
Stop right there. Should the university then not enforce its rules of conduct?
It may enforce those rules, but they shouldn't be confused with laws.
No,
And the university's enforcement then is a range of choices.
Right.
It's not necessarily first option, call in the police and send the kids to jail and charge them with trespassing. The first option may be discussion with them. The universities that have handled this best have had leadership that went out and met with the students and talked with them, and in many cases reached compromise positions. Okay, we're going to allow protest here and at this time of day and not here. So Northwestern, Brown, Wesleyan, Rutgers have all had presidents who led the university in finding peaceful compromises.
I interrupted you. You had a second point that you wanted to make.
Yeah, the second point about the issue is that you have a choice of what kind of response in the case of breaking the law. A couple examples. We've mentioned civil rights movement. Well, when people were marching without a permit, they were breaking a law or at least a regulation, perhaps. Was it appropriate to turn water cannon on them? I think not. And so we as citizens have the idea that there are appropriate punishments or not. On the university campuses with students, a first position to note is these are students. They're young people, right? We want them to learn. Our goal should not be first maintain order, first exercise authority. It should be first advance education and learning. And then, in order for educational learning to happen, maintain adequate order on campus. So, what punishes? There can be charges brought against the students through the disciplinary procedures of the university without going to the police force of surrounding communities.
Okay, I could talk to you forever.
Let me give you one last point as we close off on it. Very quickly.
Yes.
Right. I was in China in 1989, in Tiananmen Square,
yes,
watching the student protests. The students occupied the square. The Chinese government said, that's against the law. We forbid it. It exercised violence to get rid of the students. And most of the Democrats in the United States, the pro-democracy people, whatever party they're from, said, we don't want to be like China, and stood with the students.
Do you think, real quickly, are we like China right now?
I think we should be sure we're standing with the students.
Craig Calhoun from ASU, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.